Hi folks, welcome back to B29 Restoration Project. So today I finally decided to stop procrastinating about the cowls. Honestly, not as bad as I expected it to be. One of them, the number 2 engine, is already done. The number 1s and 4 I'm not going to bother with just yet. I'm going to get number 3 here done. And yeah, so this is that process. So the last cowl video I showed was pretty much talking about getting in here and trimming the inside with that little jig I made with the Dremel router tool portion, a piece of balsa wood and whatnot. To trim the back side of the cowl here, I did pretty much what I said I was going to do with my drill press. I set the bed, or the drill base, the bed, whatever you want to call it, the platform that you can adjust the height of stuff for different thicknesses. I set that to the correct distance away from the cutoff wheel that I put in the chuck of the drill, and then I basically put this flat on the cutting platform, or the drilling platform, spun it around, and got a relatively planar cut along the backside. You can see I left a little bit of extra length on here. Actually worked out really well that I did do that, because these engines I have sticking out just a little bit more to kind of help with some from nose weight that I have a feeling that we're going to need some ballast with. So now it's time to figure out the whole cowl flap thing, where the spark plug holes are going to go, all of that nonsense. Well, it kind of feels like nonsense. So anyways, what I've done is I've got the cowl here. It's already screwed in. I'll talk about how I figured out where to put the screw holes here in a moment. But to figure out where exactly the spark plug holes need to be, you can see here I've got some blue tape. I put the edge of the blue tape at the back edge of the cowl. Easy enough, right? I did that on both sides. We're good to go. So now we're going to pull the cowling off, which I've just got a couple of screws. These are 1032 black nylon screws that I've cut down just to make it to where it's a little bit easier and quicker getting them in and out. So now we're going to pull the cowl off. I'm going to put the spark plugs inside of the cylinders. And we're going to do 2 simple things. I'm going to measure from the forward edge of the blue tape to the center of the spark plug, which here on the outboard side is about 4.5 inches. And then here on the other side we have 5.6 inches. And then I'm just going to write those numbers down on my whiteboard over here. 4.5 and 5.6. Easy enough, because we're not going to need these numbers for a little bit. This whole cowl flap procedure is kind of a headache. So now I'm going to take my tape measure, and here I'm just going to go all the way down to the floor, because in this instance the engine's overhanging the cylinder, and we've got 47 and 5/8. And then the other side here we've got 13 and a half. And again, I'm just writing these numbers down over here on my whiteboard. And now we are basically done with that. So in order for the cowling to fit, I'm going to take the spark plugs back out. And then I have a couple of these little silicone tapered plugs that I'm just going to use to plug the spark plug holes to keep stuff from getting in there. So that tells us pretty much where the tip of our spark plugs are and where they're going to come out on the cowling. They do protrude a little bit outside of the cowling on the airplane by about 1/2 of an inch on each side. So we'll get to trimming that later. This video is probably going to be pretty long, to be honest. So we're going to put the cowl back on, and then we're going to get back to figuring out cowl flap stuff. Oh, you know what, before I put the cowl on, let's talk about how I figured out where to mount this thing. So what I did is I drew this little jig up here in CAD, and then I laser cut it. It's just 1/4 inch light ply. It's got a DA 100 or a Stinger 125 bolt pattern, and then I've got these little triangular shaped. They kind of look like a number 4 really once you have the tab and everything off of them. But these are 1/4 inch of height here, and then this is like another 3/4 inch. So it's about 1.25 inches full height. And basically what this does is you put it on the engine, and it automatically aligns with the inside of the cowling. And then these little standoffs here set a 1/4 inch gap between the thrust face of your drive washer for your propeller and then the forward edge of the cowling. These work really, really well. I've actually thought about maybe 3D printing or laser cutting something like this that's adjustable to where it could potentially be a cells thing. But anyway, so like that gets the propeller centered in the round hole of your cowl. Next thing, as far as like figuring out where your bolt holes, where your screw holes are going to go, I just took this piece of masking tape, I laid it across the tabs that are sticking out, and I drew from corner to corner on either side, and where they intersected, that was the center of the mounting bolt block. I did that on all 4, pulled the tape back on all 4 to where I could put the cowl back on. Like so. Took my little jig here to where it fit, and then it's not going to be quite right now because my standoffs are a little bit longer, but once I had the cowl centered with the jig and everything, I got it where it went. I drilled a number 22 hole, I think it was. Basically, whatever the clearance size for a 440 bolt is. I folded the tape back on. Alright, so once I got the cowl on there with the jig holding it in place, the tape I folded back over on top of the cowl, making sure that I pulled it straight and it didn't have a wrinkle here. And then that marked my location for the first screw hole. So once I had that first screw hole put in there, I drilled the clearance hole size for the 440 bolt, which I think it's like somewhere around 1/8 inch. I drilled one, put a long 440 bolt in, came to the other side where the tape was, drilled where the cross marks were, and I just did that all the way around, and that got the cowl basically located where I wanted it. And then I pulled the cowl off, I enlarged everything and tapped it with a 1032 tap. So tapping hardwood blocks, if you've never tapped anything, you drill it, you tap it, then you take some thin CA and you put a fairly generous, but not too generous, you don't want to fill the hole in with CA. You tap it, you thin CA the inside of it, that helps harden the threads. You let it dry for 15-20 minutes, you tap it again, you put more thin CA in there, again it helps harden the threads. I like to do that twice, and then if I've got a really nice fit, I might put just a little bit of like one more small drop of thin CA just to help kind of make almost like a locking feature in the threads that we put in there. So that all of that done, that basically gets us nice threads and hardwood block that are usable for mounting the cowl. Like I said, in this instance I've got 1032, these are black nylon screws, because I'm not really, I don't want to go through the effort of making hidden fasteners on these cowls. I'm trying to make this airplane fairly easy maintenance wise if anything does have to come off, so I'm just going to leave exposed screws heads. I chose black because they're going to blend in with the belly, and then also because I can spray alclad type materials on the top screws to give it a sort of bare metal look, so they'll blend in more so than if they were just white screws on a black airplane or a silver airplane or whatever. So that's the reason for choosing black. And then the reason for nylon, you can get 100 of them for fairly cheap, and they give a little bit, like they don't want, as vibration sit here and makes the cowl move around, it's more likely that the nylon screw is going to wear out before the cowl does. Now we're going to take those measurements that we had earlier, and we're going to use those to locate where our spark plugs are. So again, this outboard one was 47 and 5/8. Using a Sharpie here. Make a little mark. And then it was 4.5 inches forward from the back side, which puts us right there. And that should be the center of the cap or the head of the spark plug. Alright, so that's the point where we're going to drill our initial hole for our spark plug. And now it's time to start looking at doing our, what's the word I'm looking for? Now we're going to do our cowl. I did that. So I guess width-wise, I believe, well, instead of guessing, let's just measure it. Width-wise, these are 2 inches. That dimension for the cowl flap width works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a compass. I've removed the sticky tip, the little metal pin. I'm just going to measure on the compass back 2 inches. And now I'm going to take some green masking tape, and I'm just going to use this to go around the front side here to give me a nice contrast for my cut line. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a builder square here. I'm going to zoom y'all in just a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the builder square, I'm going to put it along the back side of the cowl, and then I'm going to make a mark right here. This is just the width of, that's how much distance I want between the bolt and the edge of the cowl flap, because I want to leave a tab here to mount the cowl on. So I'm going to do a mark here, and then I'm also going to do a mark back here, and I'm going to do that all the way around. Pretty much most cowl flaps you open them, they almost always have a little bit of like an angle to them, or one is angled, the other one is flat. So I'm going to kind of replicate this as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the cowl or the flap here on the mark here on the cowl side of the tape, about 1/4 inch on the forward side only. And then I'm going to take masking tape here, and I'm going to run it from the point here to point here. And what this will do is this will give us the outline of our cowl flap. That gives us this huge area of cowl flap. And me being not the smartest earlier, I did not write down any of those dimensions. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write them down from what I have on the other cowl. So that's 1.8 each. So that's really not a huge difference. So here's 1.8, and then here is 3.6. We'll do that, and then we'll take our builder square here again, and we're just going to transfer a line all the way across. And this is going to be a trim line to separate the cowl flaps that are up here. And then basically I'm going to do the same thing, taking the dimensions from the other cowl and do the exact same thing down here along the side. Cowl. We've got all that done. Now we can come back here and take all of our screws off and take the cowl off, and we can go with our Dremel tool and trim all of that. And this is where I don't know, it's a new method to me. I just thought of it, and we'll see how it works. All right, first thing I'm going to do, Dremel tool with a fairly large cutoff wheel. This is one of those easy whatever, and it's a diamond wheel. I'm going to use this at a relatively slow speed, and I'm going to cut just the separation lines. I'm not going to cut along this front edge yet, and I'm going to explain that here in a minute, just along these back edges. Alright, now you can see all of these are basically, I mean, they're cut free, separated into their widths and shapes, but they're not free. Now, the reason why I didn't take that cutoff disc and cut across the front, because we're actually going to leave these attached to the cowl portion. And you're probably wondering, how do you keep something attached from it and actually bend it when it's a fairly rigid part? So I'm going to take a fairly small, this is that same diamond cutoff wheel that I was using. These are from Amazon. Like I said, they come in like a pack of 10 or 20 for under 30 bucks. And it's very, very thin. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut along each of the cowl flaps here, but I'm not going to cut all the way across the separation cut. I'm actually going to stay about an eighth of an inch, 3/32 away from it. And then I'm going to come back later and I'm going to do something else. So I'm going to go ahead and cut through the majority of the width of these cowl flaps, and then I'll get back and I'll explain the next step. Okay, so you probably can't really see this. Let me see if I can get it through here. Here we go. As you can see, there are cut marks everywhere, except for where the vertical separation is. There you go. See, we got two gaps and then we got two tabs. What I'm going to do on the opposite side of the cowl, so the outside surface of the cowl, where those tabs are, I am going to cut them almost halfway through. And what this does is it allows the carbon that's on the backside, it kind of acts like a hinge. So it allows you to flex this out and then sand the inside of the gap to get it to where you can get the cowl flaps to come out without having to cut all of these off and individually put them back in position. So that's what we're going to do now. Again, I'm only cutting just a little bit. Maybe, I mean, this cowl is maybe a 1/16 of an inch thick, so we're cutting like 20 thousandths, or it's just a very, very minute amount. Now we have all of that trimmed, cut, notched, whatever you want to call it. We're going to pull all this tape off because we don't need it anymore. If you notice, a couple of these cowl flaps I keep hitting are awfully flexible, which is exactly what you want to see. So now we're going to go put this thing back on the airplane. You don't have to, but I found it a little bit easier to put it back on the airplane in order to do the next step. Next step, we're going to get all these cowl flaps where they stick out to where it's actually usable for cooling. So one thing you're going to need, which if you pay attention to some of my videos, I've said Permagrit tools are amazing, and they really, really are. Permagrit has these little flat, flexible sanding sheets. This is a fine one. This thing has been invaluable, this and the coarse ones. I can't tell you how many times I've had these things just make a really painful job super, super easy. So, and that's exactly what they're going to do on this one. When these cowl flaps, you can see it lifts up pretty easy, but it snaps right back in place. Let's zoom you guys in here a little bit. Well, look at this one. We got this curve. You see, we can pick it up and we can flex it out. But as we open it, you can see the gap here closes up. And that's really like, I want this to open up at least 20 degrees. That's what the other one's doing. So here you can see we're only about halfway there to 20 degrees, if that much. And our gap is already closed. This is where that sanding sheet comes in handy, and this is where this task, where this little procedure of not cutting all the way through and leaving these little tabs on the edges is freaking awesome. So I'm going to take this flexible sanding sheet, I'm going to open this cowl flap to where there's just a little bit of drag on this Permagrit sheet, and I'm just going to sand it. Move the camera where y'all can see, and I'm going to sand it as I'm opening the cowl flap with my thumb. And what this is doing is it's actually flexing this sheet a little bit, and we're getting a little bit of a curvature on the cowl flap. So once we open it, like you heard it just crack right there, now we get our full 20 degrees of opening, and you can see our gap here is pretty much closed up. I might have sanded it just a little too much, but you know, that's fine, because there's going to be a secondary way of keeping these things attached. So there you see we've got, actually that's a little bit less than 20 degrees. That's about 18. Let's get this back to where I need it, which is right at 20. And you can see, there we go. We got that gap. Big gap here. As you open it, it closes up. And that's just because these are basically acting like hinges due to the curvature. This is going to move forward as we open it. So that's basically one cowl flap. But anyways, and then I'm going to go ahead and get this glued in, and I'm going to do all 10 other ones. So I'm going to close the cowl flap here. I've got a little CA tip that I've cut down, and then I'm just going to run a nice bead of medium CA in there. I'm going to open this thing back up using my protractor here. I'm going to spritz it with some activator or some kicker, accelerator, whatever you want to call it. And then we're just going to hold it for a couple of seconds until that stuff kicks off and that CA kind of dries. Okay, folks, here you see cowl flaps are all done. Surprisingly, this video is only about 50 minutes long, 45 minutes long. Probably gonna be shorter than that. So 45 minutes to do a whole cowl flaps and everything. That's not too bad. Obviously it's not done yet. I still need to cut the holes for the spark plug caps. I'm going to wait and do a whole separate video on that so I can talk about that, and also how I did the exhaust stubs, which I will show in a video after that one at some point when I get ready to do this whole thing on the outboard wing panel engines. So back to the cowl flaps. Like I said, obviously it's not done. They're not, I mean, they're just glued in with 2 little bitty tabs of material holding. These things, if you try to run it, they'd blow off immediately. What I plan on doing is I'm going to go on the back side, and I'm going to put some medium CA in there just to kind of help solidify them a little bit more as they are now, because there is a gap on the back side. And then once everything else is done, I'm going to go in, and I honestly should have did this before I cut all this out. I should have sanded the inside of the cowl to get rid of, just give it a little bit extra tooth, because I'm going to come back here with probably like 1.5 inch to 2 inch wide strip of carbon fiber fabric, and I'm going to run it right along the seam of these cowl flaps in the cowl. That way it will really solidify and lock everything in there to add a little bit of rigidity. Honestly, it doesn't need it because of the shape, and then you've got this, which is kind of like a flange. It doesn't really need the rigidity, but a little bit of extra carbon won't hurt anything. I've got some of that 1K, 3K hybrid left over, so what I'll do is I'll cut that on the bias to where the weave is across like this, and that'll give it a really nice reinforcement to it and hold them in place really, really well. And then with the weave going across the seam like that, it'll make it really easy for it to bend, because it's not making a hard bend, it's kind of doing like a soft bend at an angle. The radius of the bend is longer. So that's it for mounting the cowl on a B29. Like I said, number 2 is already done. I got 2 engines already. The other 2 are supposed to be shipped around Thanksgiving, which y'all will probably be watching this video closer to Christmas. I'm really far behind on getting videos out. I've got quite a few of them scheduled up till now, which you'll see before this video comes out. But you know, progress wise, we're getting there one step at a time. Like I said, all 4 engines are funded at this point, so Merry Christmas to us, I guess, or to me, I don't know. All of the Jetty receiver equipment has also been funded and ordered. All of that stuff will be here before Thanksgiving. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot left to buy. Most expensive group of things to buy is the 4 propellers, and everyone's like, oh, propellers, these are cheap. It's not that bad. Like, what, $100 per propeller? Well, yeah, it's $125 times 4. So $500 of propellers. 4-engine airplanes are no joke when it comes to finances. But anyways, nose art stuff, that's also in the process of being done. Hopefully that will be done this weekend. Well, the artwork will be done. Cali Graphics is doing that stuff for us. So yeah, B29 is getting there. This thing is going to be amazing, more so than it already is. So anyways, y'all have a good one. See you next time.